Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Canned Heat Podcast. I'm your host, Hamilton Winters, strategist with Liger Partners. Today, I'm joined by
Aaron McWhirter,
the one and only Aaron McWhirter, the newest team member of Liger Partners.
Indeed, the lowest rung on the ring of the organization.
If
right?
we had a
Ladder?
totem pole, you would be on the bottom.
Yeah, it would be the base even. Not even getting my own face yet. That comes later. We are supporting the rest of the heads at this stage.
So if you're joining us live on Facebook, this is a pretty appropriate start. This is in no way something that we planned to do. Actually, we were planning on podcasting with someone else who got here about an hour and a half early. And so we had the segment time available. And Aaron, you've never done a podcast before.
No, I've never
right?
done a podcast before.
What does this feel like? How do you feel right now?
Well, currently, I'm struggling not to roll my chair around because I've been told not to. I'm feeling very energetic, a little shaky. Can't tell if it's nervousness, excitement, but we're rolling with the excitement because I'm an optimist.
That's good.
You know what I mean?
That's good. And if anybody follows along with the show or with us as personalities, Aaron's kind of overstepping his bounds with the turtleneck. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how to feel about it.
Well, I kind of came in with the idea of unnerving you, Hamilton.
Okay.
I thought, typically you come in here, it's my first podcast, and I'm going to be, the guy in the shorter chair. You know what I mean? And I knew that you were going to kind of impose on your experience here and kind of try to dominate. And so I felt if I came in looking like the spitting image of you, that you'd be so unnerved that gap, I'd retake that high ground, if you will.
Of course.
Giving me kind of a more equitable playing field.
That makes sense.
So that was kind of the thinking today while I was getting dressed. Like every day, my outfits always have to have some kind of back philosophy to them, a foundation.
So because they haven't seen you yet, we have, just in the last week, your clothing choices are unique.
Yeah, that's a word for it.
But in a tasteful way, what goes through your mind when you're picking through your closet and you're like, you know what, I'm going to dress Aaron McWhirter today, and I'm gonna look fly.
Let me walk you through it. So when I wake up in the morning, I never have my glasses because I always somehow manage to put them on the opposite side of the room. And being lazy by nature, I'm going to just walk straight to the closet. So it's early, it's dark, I'm a bit delirious. And I sort of just reach out at random, grab two things from the closet, and just kind of roll the dice on it and see what happens.
Is this really what happened?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm adding maybe a little bit of flair, but feel free to call me out on it and make my life plain and human like everyone else's.
I don't believe you for a second. I saw some like a salmon or a pink-colored suede pair of shoes on you the other day, which I don't know if I could pull that off.
See, I feel like it's my personal responsibility to change business casual. If I do nothing else in my life...
That's a bold statement.
It's to open up the prism of possibilities, if you will,
okay,
for the American workforce to really express themselves through clothes, because I really think that we're going to have a much better and more creative environment once everybody's wearing some wacko fits, you know what I mean?
That's a hot take.
Yeah.
You're putting the entire American workforce on your back.
Well, I think that's what we should all do, That's our responsibility to our fellow man. And here I am, it's like I already look young and kind of lanky and stupid, and so it's like if somebody's going to wear something whack, if somebody's going to really push that envelope, it's got to be me, because I just am already going to a little bit look ridiculous. It's this or wearing a suit and looking like, the kid president. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
yes.
Kind of like that, where you're just like, what? Why is he wearing this? It says it like the juxtaposition between youth and the formality just doesn't work.
So you were talking a little bit earlier about what happens when things just don't make sense. There's only one normal reaction, which is to laugh. To laugh.
Exactly.
Do you take that philosophy into your outfit choices?
Yeah, well, after I got rejected from clown college and ended up going into marketing as sort of my backup plan, I really wanted to take that same essence, and bring it into the business world. And you can't wear a big red nose because it's far too distracting.
Of course.
So far better to look like you tried to dress up and just failed due to youthful inexperience.
Yep.
While little do the higher ups know that it's all an intentional game to undermine, the order that's imposed by dress codes.
So you are how would I put this? You are a stylish anarchist.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
that
Noam
makes
Chomsky can write a book on that.
that makes a little bit more sense. Okay, so you show up here, I guess, last week?
Yeah.
You walk in the door.
I just came in.
You just walked in.
Yeah. No one knew.
No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
You literally walked in there like, oh, this is Aaron.
Neither did I.
And now you're the patron saint of marketing? If you will.
It's been called by just me.
Okay.
Yeah, but once I put that in on Slack, I knew that there was no coming back.
That makes
sense. You know what I
sense.
mean? Like, I
Yeah.
could have put, like, my actual title. I could have gone in there. I could have, really put myself where I deserve, where my experience level says I should belong. Or I could reach radically higher and then settle in the middle, which would be higher than I would have originally. You see, you're working with this analogy. I'm using my hands as though it makes sense, but it doesn't.
But it looks great for a still shot.
Exactly,
So-
yeah. That wasn't even like, those like diagonal bar graphs?
I
It's
do.
like a-
I do. That you can play around with and you
Yeah.
can create. Anything could be here.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything at all.
Exactly. I could put, just, I don't know, what do we want to fit in here?
I don't
Like
know.
medium, large. We're taking a lot of shots. Here's a kind of horizontal version. Here's kind of another sideways. And now we have plenty of material.
That's good.
And I think that's what marketing boils down to, is always looking for material.
It is. It is. You're absolutely right. We've created a lot of content, even since you showed up.
Yeah.
Like the Liger Gaming stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You're about, 2 years younger than me? I was born in 95. You're born in
Yeah.
97, correct?
Yes,
so you're not that
correct.
much younger than me, but when you talk, I don't know what you're saying.
Well, it's because of that gap between, I just barely made it into Gen Z.
Okay.
And you're just like barely on the tail end of like being a millennial.
Yeah.
And it really does create this like impassable void of culture between us.
It does.
Because you just learned to talk faster than me, and like you just saw some stuff that I didn't see.
Man, I mean, we saw some things.
Some things.
We saw some things.
Yeah.
But what you bring to the table on a serious note is extremely valuable. And for anybody watching this, I hope we've made you laugh so far. I hope that it's been a good experience. But on that serious note, to overlook a whole new generation, right? To say, oh, they're young kids, they don't have the experience, they're not the same as we are, is doing a massive disservice. I don't know much about the TikToks and the Twitches and the Liger Gaming stuff, but you do,
Yeah.
which is fantastic because your generation, right? You're only 2 years younger than me. I would say you're in a whole different sector, if you will. That's going to be here sooner rather than later. And you either get with the program or not.
Yeah,
right?
I definitely
And
agree.
So I have a sister. I have two sisters. One's from 98. She was born in 98. One is in 2001. 2001.
Wow.
And I joke that she's from a whole different millennium, and that's why we don't understand each other's humor. But you get some of that in business too. Do you feel like you've entered into a place that's more accepting of that, or are you trying to break it? How do you feel after being here for a week and a half?
Well, no, I think definitely one of the things that Liger does really well is balancing, intergenerational relations, if you will. It's not so big and complicated as that, but like,
You've already put the American workforce on your back. So
yeah, I already got the American workforce on my back. They're putting up with my, some could say tremendous humor, others have said idiocy and time wasting, but
synonymous.
I think in marketing, it's a lot about perspective taking, not just taking the perspective of like your clients or their customers, but also understanding how perspectives can vary, between generations, like you said, because like you take things like TikTok or even before that Twitch or any of the social media platforms, and you've seen a lot of companies with a lot of very smart, very talented people, big budgets, and they get out there and they make all this content and it flops. And if you ask the person, like if you ask the viewer, like, why is this not working? And they could say, it just doesn't feel authentic, but they can't put their finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it really just is like, you can't mimic perspective perfectly. You know what I mean? You can get close, but if you really want to make marketing material that's like accessible to a target audience, particularly an audience that you're not a part of, like that multi-dimensional perspective and bringing in people with different viewpoints, is really essential, because you can turn that the other way too and say, like, I can write like I'm writing to an audience that's older than me, but I don't quite have the perspective right because I'm mimicking it. And so by having, and Liger, I think, does that well, of like having multiple perspectives, not just in age and whatever, but also in background, where we can kind of come up with, you get this push back and forth to come up with like, what do we really want this to say at its essence? And that's something you miss when you have too much homogenization in your organization, I would think.
That's awesome. That's one, very well thought out. Thank you for that. That was great. I see this organization almost like a coffee maker, if you will. I use a lot of analogies. You know that already.
Indeed.
And so does everybody else that spends 5 seconds with me. I'm probably going to throw in a metaphor sooner rather than later. So we get coffee, right, that you put into a filter. And I see us being the filter, right, that we get a lot of the content, some of the coffee we make, some of the coffee we're given, right? But when you mix it with water, it goes through a filter and it ends up as something that is edible. You're not going to just eat raw coffee beans at all. You're not. You're just
Depends
not.
on the day, really.
Well, yeah, depends on how tired you are.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of the day, it's not going to be something that's to your liking. It doesn't taste good. And in its form, it's not really edible.
Yeah.
Once it goes through that filter of, hey, these words don't really match with your strategy, or these pictures aren't pictures of your people, they're pictures of stock people that we don't know doing similar things to what your firm does, but it doesn't really bring it home. I will not underestimate people in their ability to see through the BS,
Absolutely.
if you will.
Yeah.
Because we're ingrained with all of this information, all of these stimuli that are coming into us throughout the entire day. I was eating lunch with a friend of mine, and he was like, how do you know what marketing works and how, what marketing, I don't know if what I'm putting out there is something people want to see or if it's not. And I said, look, at the end of the day, you're getting marketed to all day long. You think it stops when you lay down at night until you look over and you see Sealy mattress on the side of the thing you're laying on. You're being marketed to from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not how much can you get in front of them. It's what's going to stand out.
Yeah.
What is it that's going to catch their eye and give you that visceral reaction? I remember 5-hour energy commercials because I hate them. I hate 5-hour energy commercials. I'll say it. 5-hour energy. If you're watching this, I hate your commercials. But guess what? I'm talking about them right now. And congratulations.
CMO just flip the desk.
Whoever your marketing people are should be standing up and applauding because that's a visceral reaction.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not lukewarm. It's hot or cold. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that, you really touched on the head of saying, like, you have to stand out. And I think a lot of companies think that noise alone is going to get them there. They're like, oh, yeah, well, you ask somebody, like, what do they want to be? And they're like, well, we want to be innovative. We want to be, cutting edge, best in class. And it's like, that's great. But everybody says that.
Yep.
And I think that effective marketing is marketing that's novel, not because you come up with some like new, like you're reworking the wheel or something. It's more just because there's something that your business does. Your business is unique. Your take on this perspective, like you're not just a financial services firm, you're this financial services firm. And you have a philosophy and a way of doing business which leans itself to unique advantages. And you don't need to explain every time why somebody needs a financial services firm. You need to show why you as a financial services firm are better and different. And so identifying, I would say the authentic things about you, like don't just say, oh, we're best in class. Talk about why you're best in class. Show people something that they haven't seen before. I mean, the word that Eric uses a lot is educate people with what you talk about. Don't just say like, oh, yeah, we're reliable, we're whatever. How are you reliable? What is your unique way that you're demonstrating these values or virtues that we all want out of companies, that the consumer cares about? Because like you said, we're marketed to all the time. There's, hundreds or thousands of competing messages, and they all say the same thing at a high level. And so standing out to me is about doubling down on what it is that you do that no one else does, that makes you a better choice than somebody else, because you're not good at everything. You're super good at some things. And I think that can be hard for people because it's tough to like analyze your company and sort of come up with what you think is unique, because it's hard to see yourself in the bigger picture, if
Yep.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Like you might feel like you're unique in some way, but what your perspective on like what's good versus how that translates to a consumer may not be quite right. And I think that's what companies like Liger do, is trying to figure out how to tell their story in a way that resonates with people and cuts through the noise.
That's good.
Do you double down on the good, like on the strength or on the weakness?
I would say you double down on the strength, because like it is unrealistic to say, oh, we do everything right. You know, you can't, unless, you know, there's that whole idea of like blue ocean strategy where you're, you know, in this unique space where you're not competing, and that's great and all, and it's great if you can fall into that. But by and large, you're making trade-offs. You can't be best in class and also the cheapest.
Yep.
And so trying to talk people into that you're a cheap option, or that you're worth the money, is a waste of time. Tell them, look, like, yeah, you're going to pay a little bit more, but the value to you is more, because you're not trying to fool the consumer. If you don't genuinely believe in your product or service, you shouldn't be trying to market it, honestly. And I think when people sit back and they really think like, why, if I were the consumer and I was picking up the phone, why should I call this company my company as opposed to anybody else? What are the things that I think, you know, make that a worthwhile distinction?
Yeah.
And that's where I think really innovative marketing comes.
That's awesome. I see there are 3 words, right? And what I see businesses doing is, I see businesses either competing on price or competing on quality, right?
Yeah.
We have the highest quality blank, or we have the lowest price blank. What value is the crossroads between high quality and low price.
Yeah.
But everything is relative, right? So you could sell your product at a higher cost if you convey that it is of immensely higher value than that of your competitor, right?
Yeah.
And so that value is really what we're trying to convince our clients to go out there and sell, because you might not be the lowest price. So that's not a road you necessarily want to travel down, especially if you have a high quality product. You're not going to want to not make a living because you're underselling something that's immensely more valuable than what you're charging for it.
Yeah.
At the same time, you also don't want to go highest quality if you know that you can't actually hit that point. So where do you want to be in that matrix of, it's almost like a times table. Where do you want to be? And it's also interesting that you add to that, this is something we do in our branding practice, personality.
Yeah.
Right. And what was so interesting to me is in the rebranding of one of our clients recently, 2 of the personalities that we chose for them that they could go this way or this way, if mixed together and not separated, they became another personality. So it was expert. Do you want to be the expert?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the person that everybody goes to because they know more about this subject than anybody else? Or do you want to be the savior?
Yeah.
Do you want to be the person that comes in at the last second that they say, we're in a pickle and we know these guys can dig us out of the hole? But if you don't make a distinction between being the savior and being the expert, you end up as the enabler.
Yeah.
As the expert that's like the parent that says, hey, look, you know, you shouldn't do that, but if you get in a pickle, then we're here. Do you want to be the enabler? Because nobody likes an enabler.
Yeah, and I think another thing that people kind of miss is that they don't see those things as like contradicting messages. Like if you're saying, okay, we make the highest quality product ever. Oh, and also we're going to sell it for really cheap. You know, if I'm sitting on the street and I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that you make the best quality and for no reason whatsoever you're going to sell it for really cheap too, I start to question that.
Of course.
Because those 2 things, it's not that it's impossible to be cheap and also really high quality. It's just that it starts to question, like, how did you make it so cheap? Or why are you not selling it for a lot? If you're so confident in your value.
They don't sell Tiffany diamonds at Dollar General.
Exactly, yeah, because, like, could they make them cheap enough for that? Sure, but, like, why would you? Aren't you trying to say that these are the best diamonds? Aren't you saying that, like, I take pride in my work and think it's valuable? And so people counteract their own message by trying to play every role for every consumer. And you just have to understand that, you know, there's almost a lifestyle personality component. You know, what you said about personality I think is really fitting. Especially with service firms, as an example. Because people, you know, if you come in and you're saying, okay, I want to hire an accountant, your customer can't sit there and go, okay, this is what my accountant's going to do for me, like tangibly, like knock down the list. They're partially choosing you because of your personality, because of like a anticipation of how you're going to think and react in a certain situation. So like, you know, you want to convince your client that you think the right way, which is a vague statement, but what I mean by that is that when they're not looking and when a problem comes up, that you're going to react in the way that they want you to, that you're going to handle it in the way that they need to, because you just can't say like, oh yeah, I'm your accountant and this is everything I'm going to do for you for the next 25 years. You have to say, oh, I'm your accountant, and when it gets tough, I'm going to be diligent. And when, you know, my morals get compromised, I'm going to be ethical. You know, these are things that are difficult to put on paper, but they're really important to translate to people, to make them feel at ease, if that makes sense.
No, it makes total sense. And you mentioned something in a couple of answers ago, which is it's difficult to work on your business when you work in it. And I'm paraphrasing. But that's exactly what we started Liger Partners for, is for business owners or business teams that marketing is not their daily task, but it has become their daily task, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You're an operations person doing marketing because you know marketing is essential, but that's not what you do.
Yeah.
So how much of your time is spent doing something that you don't naturally do in order to do something that is not natural for you, which takes away time from what you should be doing, which is natural for you?
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think a big problem that a lot of people have is, or a lot of like businesses have, is separating almost like the different levels of interest the consumer takes in what they do and the interest they take, which is to say, you know, if you are a manufacturer of like microcircuitry, you clearly love microcircuitry. You know, you went into, you started a business about it. And, you know, if somebody were to ask you, like, what makes your microcircuits good, you could probably launch off on all these things about how, like, you know, it's best in class, like we said, and you can talk about all these examples, and you're going to watch their eyes just slowly, like, roll back into their head as they just, you know, they just don't care.
Yeah.
Not because it's not interesting, but because it's not interesting to them.
Yep.
This isn't a, you know, objective game here. This is a, like, what does the customer care about? And I think that the advantage of outsourcing your marketing and bringing people in with an outside perspective is they can go, okay, you know, you think, business owner, that this is cool, but what is it that the customer cares about this product? And how are they thinking about it? And finding this sort of, you know, harmonious link between those two things, translating, you know, the expertise into the everyday, is very difficult to do when you're an expert, because you feel like, I think it's hard to analogize away when you know exactly what you're talking about. You know, you go, well, it's kind of like this, and, you know, that's what the common person, or common not being in like uneducated way, but just like not an expert in this field,
The layperson.
that's how they think of it, you know, but it's hard to translate that when you have 20 years of experience. And the more you learn and the better you get at your day-to-day job of being an expert, the more niche and specialized your knowledge is, and therefore the more difficult it is to translate it to somebody who lacks it. And so being a better marketer kind of, I think, goes a little bit contrary to being the best version of a business leader or working in operations, like you said, because, you know, because marketers have to have sort of a generalized, you know, broad but not deep knowledge, you know, and I think that's a big advantage of taking somebody out and going, okay, like, I get that you think this is really cool and you could talk about it endlessly, but your consumer cares about it for about 30 seconds. And here's what you need to tell them in that 30 seconds, you know, because they don't need to know everything you do. That's why they're paying you.
Yep.
Or buying your product, etc.
Yeah, no, that's really good. We posted something on our social media the other day that was, marketing is inviting somebody on a date. Branding is the reason why they said yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we do is very much like dating. It's how can we, one, get you to notice us, two, compel you enough to accept our invitation, and three, follow through to the point that after dinner's over, you want to have dinner again.
Yeah.
You want to go to coffee. You want to have lunch. You want to get to know me, not because I forced you to, but because I interested you.
Yeah.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah, I think the dating analogy is a useful one here because it's like, say I was on a date with somebody and I was trying to convince them that I was trustworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm an expert on how trustworthy I am. I have a plethora of examples I could give, but I would be a very bad and very boring date if I sat down and I went, here's 2007, April 10th at 4:30 when I, chose not to lie after getting in trouble with my mom. People would just be like, what? And so, like, your goal isn't to show every example. Your goal is to give the impression, that you're trustworthy or whatever virtue you're trying to project. And I think that is the key to marketing, is understanding how to say less but mean more. Because they don't need your whole story, whole brand story or your whole personal story. You'll be a very boring, conversation-dominating date.
You're absolutely right. One thing that I see that we run into, just keeping on with that dating analogy, is if you go out on a date with someone and all you talk about is yourself, how many of those dates would you turn around and say, yeah, the person that you went on the date with would count that as a successful date?
Yeah.
It's constantly, how do we learn more about you? So many of our clients want to put out, and this is just a natural behavior, they want to, let's tell you who we are, what we do. How do we get you to ask those questions to us?
Yeah, well, I think that touches on a really good point of saying that, the interest of your conversation with a customer as a service or product provider is not what your product does. It's the difference between features versus benefits, right? So say I'm selling a smartphone, and that smartphone does 100 cool things. And to different people, maybe 20 of those things are very cool. And effective selling and effective marketing comes back to identifying not what does your product do, but what does your product do for them? Why do they care? Because you're not an expert on your customer's business if it's B2B, or on your consumer's preference if it's B2C. But what you are an expert on is how your service or whatever you're offering can benefit them, how it fits into their needs, right? And so I think focusing on that needs identification part is the key, because that's what they're there for. The reason they're willing to give you money is because they have a problem and they think you can solve it. And so talking about, oh yeah, also our thing does all this other extraneous stuff that's absolutely nothing to do with their problem is wasted energy.
Yeah.
Because again, they don't care about your product nearly as much as you do. And that's not a bad thing.
No.
Because different consumers have different needs. It's about identifying what are the 2 or 3 things that really provide value to this customer with their specific problem or goal. And then doubling down on explaining why you're the best source for that.
That's good. Why'd you go into marketing?
It was the most fun business major.
Okay.
Originally, I was going to go into political science, actually, back because I went to the University of Georgia. And I remember going to my initial, orientation or whatever, and I was sitting there, and they had this big event for the Terry College of Business, because it's, the biggest school there. And they were coming out and they were giving out snacks and all this stuff. And I talked to some people and I was like, wow, you guys got it going on. And I was asking more questions. And, originally it was I saw that the line was really long. There were a lot of pretty girls in that line. And I went, interesting. And that kind of killed my dreams of becoming a political correspondent then and there. And I went to my advisor, and by the time I was signing up for classes, lo and behold, I was a marketing major.
Wow.
I also think it's the most sexy of all majors, because you don't want to say you're no offense to accountants, but when I go, oh yeah, I'm in marketing. You're both creative but reliable. You're a numbers guy, but you're an artist.
That's a good way to put it.
It's a nice middle ground. It makes you cool.
That's a good way to put it. I've never thought of it.
Yeah, I went into marketing because it's the coolest business field.
Is it what you expected now that you're in it?
Honestly, yes and no, in that I think that my broad impression of the culture of marketing being a good fit for me was good, but I was the thing I didn't expect to enjoy about it is the like every day in my job, I'm working with, in my first week of this job, I've been working with like different clients, and they all do vastly different things, work in different industries, different, company scale, different location, all of that. And you get to put on all these hats. I don't know much about satellites, but one day here I am reading about satellites to write content as though I'm an expert. And that's super interesting to me, to be able to jump from industry to industry, because I just like learning about stuff. And I feel like marketing gives you this opportunity to constantly be doing something novel, constantly be learning something new. And it's both, neat to have all that unique knowledge and unique perspectives, but also you can kind of get a much broader worldview than I think is possible if you work in like a single field where you're in one business unit and you deal with one specific thing. Marketing, I feel like, touches everything.
You're right. It absolutely does. I feel like it's a breaker box, and I told Eric and Whitney this as well. I was like, I don't sleep as well at night after these 3 months because I feel like my brain's just confused. Like, I wrote a blog on payment processing, and then I turned that breaker off and turned the breaker on to write a newsletter about prostate cancer, and then I turned that breaker off and I turned another one on to write about something else.
Yeah.
1,000 different industries. And what we say is we're industry agnostic, problem specific, and right to your point, it does allow you to get your toes wet in a lot of different industries, and you don't have to be an expert.
Yeah.
You have to know a little bit about a lot of things, not a lot bit about a couple of things. Makes you a better, more well-rounded person. It makes you a more knowledgeable person. I'd say that it helps you in conversations just in general. And you always have a tie, right? The best conversations are the ones that you meet someone, you don't know them from Adam, but they say something and you latch onto it because you have some sort of connection.
Yeah.
I'm from Louisiana. Oh, we could talk for an hour. I'm from Louisiana too. No way. And then 30 minutes later, we find out that we're second cousins, which happens a lot in Louisiana. But at the end of the day, you're spot on when you say that this, as an industry, gives you a lot of opportunity, not only to wear a lot of hats, which you'll wear a lot of hats, but to get your toes wet in a lot of verticals that otherwise you wouldn't get to touch. You might be climbing the corporate ladder for 10 years in the same vertical, and then by the time that something happens and that job's not there anymore, well, what experience do you have elsewhere?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Maybe it's a very specific industry that happens to be not recession proof at all. Right. 2008 happens again. Then what do? You don't know anything else except for what you've been doing the last 10 years. Have you made yourself versatile enough to where somebody could pick you up and not have to polish those rough edges?
Yeah.
That you are kind of a circle that can fit in a lot of different shapes, if you will.
Yeah, and I think you build a lot of perspective in this kind of work, which is to say, like, you see a challenge even at like the top companies in the world, where you have these people who are absolutely brilliant, absolute genius in the thing that they do, and they're being paid a boatload of money and everything's going great. But there's this disconnect between the plans that they have and the viewpoint that they have and the customers they serve or the people that work for them.
Yep.
And I think that the act of like in marketing where you're constantly asking like not what do I think about this, but what do other people think about this?
Yep.
From a huge variety of backgrounds, huge variety of educational levels, expertise, values, you start to kind of get this almost cosmopolitan worldview.
Yep.
Where you can kind of see that things are angles and perspectives. And I think it makes it better, to work with people in business. It makes it better to make decisions, considering all the angles and everything instead of just your personal, business philosophy or whatever. But also even just like socially being able to understand that like people can come from radically different perspectives. And that's a good thing. And to be able to see the benefits of each of those things and also the drawbacks. And I find that to be fascinating.
It is.
And that's a really enthralling part of the work.
That's a great point. What Enneagram type are you?
Oof. I don't know that one. Can we go Myers-Briggs instead?
Yeah. What's your Myers-Briggs?
Okay, ENTP.
ENTP. So energetic. Is that what E stands for?
Energetic.
What is it?
That's
Engaging?
Energetic versus non-energetic.
What I don't know.
They're the sluts
what is
of
that?
the world and the rabbits.
I threw you Enneagram and you threw it back as Myers-Briggs, and
Yeah,
I accepted it gracefully.
That's fine. Okay, you're right.
Explain this
You're
to
right.
me. I know what I am,
will-
but I don't know what it stands for.
Then I'll apologize. You're right. It's extroverted.
Extrovert.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not tired. Okay, extrovert. E-N.
E-N is intuitive,
Okay.
and then T is thinking, and then P is perceiving.
Okay. Interesting.
And-
What is that personality type? What's it? Have you like seen the name of it?
Well, at a broad level, it's pseudoscience, but in it's it's the debater.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Exhibit A.
Yeah. Well, you could call it debater. You could call it being conversationally difficult.
Yeah.
Or you could call it not giving ground. Again, it really depends on your perspective.
Of course. No, that's interesting. We've been going through kind of a executive coaching exercise here. A couple of us have, and doing these personality assessments, but more focused on business. What I found interesting about this particular test that we took was it had nothing to do with your adaptive style. It was all about your natural behaviors, which if you're in a time of stress or a time of difficult time, that's what you revert back to. If the workload gets too much, if you've had some sort of crisis go on, it's your natural behavior that you go back to. And it's always interesting to find out, one, how you work, what your natural and adaptive abilities are, but also the people around you, right? What's so interesting here at Liger is that in any given week, any Aaron McWhirter can come through the door, and that's a new personality, bringing a new story, bringing new perspectives from a new experience. That now we have to figure out how we fit that into the ingredient mix to make something taste wonderful.
Yeah.
Right? So even that question, which I didn't know that about you until you said that, but figuring out those small things about each individual helps to drive the culture of the entire firm.
Yeah.
And I've appreciated you being open with me and Isaac over here in the corner. We have a really good team. And
Yeah, we do.
I hope you've enjoyed your first week and a half being on it, because we've enjoyed having you.
Well, that's been the best thing about it, I think, is how open and accepting everybody's been. And how, there's a lot of jobs, that you can take where you have to claw for every iota of like self-direction and responsibility that you can get.
Yeah.
Because you come in and they treat you like a robot that does one thing until proven otherwise. And, I feel like one of the best things about Liger is that, it's this idea of like encouraging, not just for me to do what you want me to do, but also to bring a unique perspective or a unique, unique desires and goals for what I think marketing is, and letting me play with that a little bit, and in turn, I can also learn so much, and I've really enjoyed that. I feel like there's this perfect balance between, letting me run with stuff a little bit, but also some coaching, because, I don't know everything, and I'm inexperienced in terms of like professional work, and so being able to both be on training wheels but also get to kind of run my own thing is really cool. And I think it's something that you don't see in a lot of companies, at least not for like months and months until you've really proven yourself and done the kind of grunt work.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think we're about to wrap it up. Anything else you want to add before we
I think
call it
fresh out
a day?
of funny ideas, so
Yeah.
we'll call it here.
This was great. This is your first podcast.
Yeah, did it.
Which is awesome. How does it feel?
Inaugural I've done it now.
You've done it now.
The sky's the limit at this point.
Well, you crushed it. You did a good job.
You may never see me again, because we're gonna cut this and he's gonna go like, oh yeah, man,
Yeah,
I don't know.
He's
about
gonna go back to that
one,
robot that does one thing.
Yeah, they're like,
and-
yeah,
because
let's
he didn't
demote
prove us
Aaron
wrong.
down. Yeah,
So okay, well you can go back to the closet under the hallway stairs.
yeah, just like Harry Potter.
yeah.
Just that's where I do my blog writing, all
Exactly.
cramped up.
All of his other letters come through the fireplace. So anyway, thanks for being on.
Thanks for having
It's
me.
been great. To all the viewers on Facebook, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this Canned Heat podcast with Aaron McWhirter. You're going to be seeing him again. We'll leave the door on the hallway closet unlocked from now on. But
Creep out here and there.
exactly. Everybody have a great weekend. We sure are appreciative that you joined us today. And until next time, Hamilton Winners, Aaron McWhirter with Liger Partners. See you later.
Have a great week.
Are your feelings easily hurt? Feeling that people are unfriendly, or do you feel like people just